Hey everybody, welcome to your readings for the week. These are the readings for the week ending June 3rd. Last little bit of May, first little bit of June, and well, it's kind of a doozy this week. We already have some pretty big challenges that are already there. The moon kind of plays into those challenges a bit, making them a little bit bigger. It's going to affect a lot of people on this list, um, including myself. But let's just go ahead and jump into it, see where it takes us. I'm going to start with Darcy. Well, you know what, as far as the astrology is concerned, watch the horoscopes, and I go into all of that. I don't want to go into all of that again. It is a pretty big challenge, though. We do have Jupiter in Taurus, which is causing a fairly big challenge with Pluto and Mars, and Venus is playing more and more into that. The challenge gets a lot bigger Wednesday and Thursday as the moon moves into opposition with Jupiter and moves into opposition with Uranus and Mercury, who both planets also in Taurus. So those two planets are not normally in this challenge, but they sort of get pulled into the challenge for a day or so. So Wednesday and Thursday are really going to be the big challenge days for this, specifically because the moon's influence on this challenge is emotional thinking. And I feel like in many ways, this gives us an opportunity to kind of look at our emotional thought process in terms of, is it healthy for us? Is it helping us? Is it harming us? Is it holding us back? Usually the answer to that question is it's not helping and it's holding us back. There are some instances where it is kind of a positive, but most of all, it sort of holds us back, and it sort of fuels this sort of negative self-talk that we use to come up with excuses as to why we can't do what we want to do. And with everything focused on long-term goals, this can be a huge wrench in proceeding with those goals, if that makes sense. So I want to say, first of all, don't do that. If you get into a stinking thinking mode, don't make a decision based on emotional thought processes. Number one, that's the biggest thing to think about this week. The other thing that I'm being shown for you coming up this week is I feel like in some ways there are those that are not very supportive toward your goals, if that makes sense, specifically your career goals. So this happens a lot if you're a really good employee and you kind of want to move up in the company, and you got a manager who's like, oh, I'm totally behind you on that and support you, but I'd hate to lose you. And then what you don't realize is that behind your back, they're sort of working against you getting that promotion because they don't want to lose you as a worker. I kind of feel something along those lines coming up around you this week. It's almost like somebody is supportive to your face, but not behind your back. And so I'm sort of getting this so that you know to be aware that this is something, that this is a thing that could come up. Also, while it's nice, that somebody would want you to continue to stay there, I don't care what their reasonings are. If it's up to you to move to the next level, it's up to you to move to the next level. And it really has nothing to do with them and what they want and what they need, or their problem, not yours, if that makes sense. So you want to make sure, it's very important to make sure that you don't make this your problem. It's their problem. Leave it as their problem. Last thing that I'm being told for you is at the beginning of the week, and I don't see this very often, so it's obviously something that I need to share for sure. Because I don't see this very often, but at the beginning of the week, I'd say the first 2 or 3 days of the week, the lines in the middle of the chart, which 3 planets in Taurus very much have a lot to do with, okay, sort of make a star. And the star is made up of challenges, and it's made up of aspects that are very helpful. And you can't get a star without both. And I feel that this is really important for you, because I get a sense that there are times in your life where you've held back your light, you've dimmed your light, you've held back on showing what you're made of so that someone else can shine. This is your time to shine, period. End of discussion. Mic drop, please. Okay. It is not time for you to hold back your light for anybody. And don't worry about hurting feelings either. Feelings are going to get hurt because they're meant to get hurt. As long as you're not going out of your way to hurt somebody's feelings, you're fine. So that's what I have for you. And I am going to move on to Kendra. Again, yeah, there's a lot going on astrologically. Jupiter continues to be in that T-square with Mars, and now Venus, as Venus moves into conjunction with Mars and Pluto. And when the moon moves opposite of Jupiter into Scorpio, this is going to create a much bigger challenge about Wednesday and Thursday. The moon's influence in this challenge is very interesting because her focus is on thought process, so specifically emotional thought processes. I'm really talking about those types of thought processes where you start to, this is a very common one for women, actually, I think, where we are, thinking about our husbands going somewhere like to a resort, and then we start thinking about chicks that could be hitting on him, and then that takes us to what if he's reciprocating, and then by the end of the conversation we have him cheating on us with a harem, basically. That's what I'm referring to when I'm referring to emotional thought processes. It's just blowing things really out of proportion when they don't need to be blown out of proportion. I see this a lot around your work goals, specifically your own business goals. And there's going to be, because this is a challenge that is going to sit there for a minute, at least the next few weeks, it shows that there's going to be quite a few wrenches that are going to be thrown into your path in terms of your long-term goals. And just because they're there does not mean that you can't learn and grow from those challenges. In fact, these challenges are there for you to grow, to help you grow, and to help you put yourself in the position to be ready to do this, to achieve these goals, if that makes sense. A couple of things that are coming up around the emotional thought process. There's a couple of things. One, as much as this space is beautiful and you love it, I see a bit of regret of, oh my God, what did we do? Little bit of panic there all of a sudden, because in some cases it is a very different way of living, and but that's also very natural, when you change your surroundings in such a drastic way, in terms of, from state to state. I think anytime you leave California and go anywhere else, it's like a whole different world, honestly. Much less so from going from state to state, from other states to other states, if that makes sense. So I do get a little element of a panic there, and I'm not sure if that's coming from you or your husband, or maybe both of you. Maybe you've been going back and forth on the panic. That's very normal. It does not mean that you need to go backwards. In fact, I don't think that going backwards is really going to be helpful for you right now. Honestly, it's an adjustment for everybody. And once you get into a routine and things calm down a little bit, it won't be quite so panicky, if that makes sense. The other thing that I'm feeling around you is I'm seeing you spending a lot of time outside, a lot of time acclimating to your outside environment. Even it's sitting and meditating in different spots in that environment. And there's a part of me that's picking up in your head that you're not wasting time doing this, but you could be spending that time on other things. Always true. There's always something. But actually, this is important. Part of it is creating a connection between you and your land. Part of you is owning your land. Part of you is acclimating to your space and finding your space. I feel it's really necessary that somewhere in that space is a space dedicated to you and what you want to use it for, if that makes sense. And that could be outdoors or in, I mean, it could be a she shed in the back or something like that, but it's very specific to finding your space in that setting, your private space, I should say. It's not to say that you're locking all the boys out, but I get it. Trust me, I have 3 boys. So that's what I have for you, Kendra. And I am going to move on to Jeannette. Well, we're still partying in Gemini. We still have the sun in Gemini. The sun is in a trine with Pluto. So everybody else is sort of arguing with Pluto, but not the sun. The sun is in a trine with Pluto, which is kind of nice when you think about it. Pluto is retrograde on the cusp of Capricorn and Aquarius, which is why it's a trine, because it's technically in Aquarius. Pluto is the planet of transformation. And in some cases, Pluto represents harnessing your personal power. And the sun is focused on careers. So with that being said, Pluto's retrograde does kind of sort of give you this sort of false feeling like you can't harness your power, or you don't have any power to change situations or what have you. And I can see that in terms of what you've been going through with disability, what you've been going through looking for work, what you've been going through just basically trying to figure out your financial situation. And this planet sort of lining up in this way is actually creating a very favorable energy to help get through that so that you can move on with that process. Because I do feel like you have been unable to make certain decisions because you're waiting on other people to make decisions, and that's really frustrating, for sure. The sun also is in a sextile with Mars, which is interesting. Mars is still focused on inner trauma, focused on the release of inner anger. And even I'm annoyed by it at this particular point because of where it's settling right now. It directly affects me when there's a planet in my sign, which there is. So, but I feel like because of this is a sextile, this is 2 planets working together with each other. Okay. I feel like in some ways this is playing out for you in terms of releasing, um just not holding on to things that used to piss you off before, if that makes sense. They don't affect you in the same way because you're just not holding on to it um in a way that you're using it to flog yourself or beat yourself up, if that makes sense. This is more how you deal with those situations. It's kind of like, oh, well, that didn't work. That was kind of dumb. Okay, moving on, trying again, kind of a thing. Not quite as drastic or destructive as maybe it once was, which is really good, by the way. Good for you doing that. We also have Juno in Aries. Juno is known as the Great Consort. And where this is significant actually is the Sun square with Saturn. Saturn's focus is your responsibility to your relationship, your responsibility to the people around you. You just got married again. We all know who that is. But also really paying attention to and making sure that you're not using responsibilities that aren't yours anymore as an excuse not to further your career or what it is that you want to do, if that makes sense. So for instance, you have your daughter and your grandsons and you love them and you want to help your daughter out as much as you can, but you can't keep yourself in a situation where you're constantly on call and therefore holding yourself back. And so this is what this challenge is. It's not that these people are holding you back. It's you making sure that you're not using them as an excuse not to move forward in your plans, because that would be bad. And it's very unfair to them to put them in that position, especially without their permission, if that makes sense. This actually gets amplified right at the end of the week as the moon moves into opposition with the sun in and the moon's focus is going to be on the home. So it's almost like you want to stay locked up in your craft room creating stuff, and you're focusing on your business, right? And ideas and what you need to do to turn your hobby into a business. But the house or your husband or your kids or somebody is constantly, wait, but I need attention. Wait, but I need something. How come you're ignoring me when I need something? That gets frustrating. Been there, done that. Could probably write a book on it. My best advice for that is to set up times. I am trying to focus on this right now. Can I get back to you in an hour or so? And I will give you my full attention. And then that way you're not trying to tackle both at the same time and getting frustrated and screwing it all up and causing this big old mess that you're not going to want to clean up later anyways, right? So that's what I have for you. And I'm going to move on to Connie, I do believe. Yes. So let's talk about Mars being in Leo. And we'll also talk about Venus being in Leo next week. I know we could wait till next week, but 28 degrees Cancer is the cusp of Leo. So it is, we're already going to be feeling it this week, basically, which is why we're talking about it this week. It's moving into conjunction with Mars. It's moving into this challenge that Mars has with Pluto and Jupiter right now. And the moon on Wednesday and Thursday is also going to not only move into that challenge, but exasperate that challenge and make that really a lot bigger. And what does that look like? It looks like a big old silly mess, as my oldest autistic child would say. Anything that goes wrong is a big old silly mess. That's what he calls it. But it's a big old silly mess that we create ourselves because the moon's focus is on emotional thinking. Okay. Emotional thinking, granted, there's all kinds of emotions, good, bad, and different. But when I say emotional thinking, we're not talking about feelings of love. Okay. We're talking about stinking thinking. We're talking about emotionally berating ourselves, or we're talking about thinking about a situation in a negatively emotional way. So that even if you had a situation that went off without a hitch and it was perfect, you're looking for the details to nitpick on to make it an emotional situation that you can get into the hamster wheel and wheel and wheel and wheel it around for a while. It is exhausting and it's a mess. And when I say we all consciously do it, it makes no sense why we're consciously doing it, but we do it all the time. So I feel like this challenge is coming up on a scale the way that it is, because we all do that from time to time, some of us more than others. And by making us do it, it's giving us the opportunity to identify that we're doing it and decide whether we're going to continue that mess, because it is a mess, which is unproductive, or if we're going to change the thought process, if we're going to change how we look at it. And one thing about challenges is they are as big or small as we make them. So a run in your stocking can turn out to be just the worst day ever. Because if you look at it and go, I got to run in my stocking, now my day is just going to suck. Well, then everything that could possibly suck is going to be like, oh, she wants a sucky day, right? Let's give her one, right? Or you can look at a major challenge as like you are on an interstate and there's so much traffic, you're going to be sitting there for 3 hours. And you can look at that and say, well, I have a new audiobook that I am dying to listen to. So guess what I'm doing for 2 out of those 3 hours, right? And find a way to enjoy it, because you can't, there's nothing you can do to get out of that situation. It really is all about, most of life really is all about mindset. And these challenges come up to teach us which mindset works better, honestly. I mean, in those two incidences, who do you think is the happiest person? Obviously, the person who sees a challenge as an opportunity to get a couple of hours in to read a book or listen to one, right? Through the car, because you can do that. Obviously, breaking out a book might be a little bit difficult. This is happening about Wednesday or Thursday, so this could impact dealing with clients, because it is right in the middle of the week. You want to make sure that you're going in there clear, you're grounding and bubbling, you're not worried about the last client, you're not worried about the next client, you're not obsessing in here over the details of what's going on with this client. And I think that, you know, in terms of lessons, personal lessons for you, I think this is a big one. And this is why it's actually a pain in the ass, but it's actually a good thing that this is coming up for you right now. It gives you an opportunity to work with that. The other thing that I'm sort of picking up is I feel like Venus's focus is very much on your support system. And because it's also a big, huge part of this challenge, meaning it looks like you don't have any support from anybody, I almost want to say that this week, somebody that you would not think of as being part of your support system, it's almost like they pop up out of nowhere and you're like, I completely forgot about this person, right? Or I completely forgot about them being supportive in the way that I didn't realize that they were beforehand, or somebody that isn't normally supportive, almost sort of popping up and being supportive, like in a way that makes you go, what the hell just happened? Kind of. It's like, am I in the Twilight Zone? What's going on? It's important to be appreciative. Not to say that you're not appreciative, but it's important mindset wise to be appreciative, and not necessarily go straight to, well, this is what they didn't do. Okay, because that's not appreciative. The last thing that I'm being shown for you this week is okay. I know there's an issue with your knee, but I'm being shown your foot, specifically being careful to make sure that things that are on the floor are not in a space where you could smack your foot on them, say in the dark. And this is kind of how I'm seeing fumbling around in the dark, and you got this box and you just put it there and forgot about it. And I don't see you falling. This is more hurting your foot. And I'm not sure if it's the same foot as the bad knee or if it's the opposite foot as the bad knee. It doesn't matter, because it's going to make you hobble more weird than you were. So this is more of a reminder to make sure that you don't just put something somewhere that I'm going to get to later, and then you forget, you might hurt yourself. Okay. Or if there's something that's already there that you keep saying, God, I got to move that because I'm going to trip on it. Move it so you don't trip on it, because it's highly possible that you're going to trip over it. It's just that, time is running out. It's going to happen. So best to avoid that at all, as much as you can. And that's what I have for you, Connie. Moving on to Jenny. So we have Mars in Leo, and we have Venus moving into Leo at a rapid rate. Not quite in Leo this week. That will happen next week. But she is moving into conjunction with Mars, which means that she is playing into this challenge that Mars has with Pluto and Jupiter this week, which is like, yay. And she's going to keep playing into that challenge, which just makes it all that much more fun, doesn't it? And then the moon is going to come in to end of Libra, beginning of Scorpio, Wednesday, Thursday, and exasperate this challenge, make it even bigger than it already was. I mean, I know just listening, you're like, oh, I'm so excited. I can hardly wait, right? And the moon, joining this challenge is actually very interesting, because the moon's focus is on thought processes, specifically what happens when your thought process is overly emotional. So it doesn't become a bigger part of the challenge. It shows you how you make challenges more challenging by the way you process or think about the challenge. So if you're in a stinking thinking mode, it makes the challenge bigger. If you're in a there's no sense in emotion and crying over spilt milk, we just need to clean up the milk kind of a mentality, then you're going to be more successful in getting through the challenge. And it's very black and white in that sense. So I feel like, because Leo's focus really is on inner trauma, and Mars has been just digging that anger out of us for months, and now he's literally like in Leo, the bottom of the cookie jar, getting all the crumbs out, right? This is one of those classic times where you're triggered a lot, and with everything pointing toward long-term goals, it feels like the changes that you've been putting into place, there may be a couple of hiccups there, a couple of things that you thought were worked out, but it turns out they're not. And it's frustrating. But you don't want to emotionally react to it because obviously that's not going to be helpful unless you really need to emotionally react to it. Like, you can only tell somebody, I'm going to only show you this one more time. So many times before you just lose your shit. Okay, I get that. I do. And I'm one of those people that keeps forgetting, unfortunately. So a couple of things for you. All challenges aside, okay? I do see hiccups is the best word to call them, hiccups in some of your plans. That doesn't mean your plans are off. It means there's a hiccup, okay? And you can get frustrated over the hiccup. That's fine. Or you can try and find a solution to fix the problem, if a solution there is. In some cases, it's just about waiting, which is really annoying. But in terms of the hiccups, I don't see that these are huge problems either. It's a bit of a delay. The timing's not right. When I booked a hotel in Vegas once, and when I called to reserve it, I couldn't use the card to reserve it. I had to book a whole new hotel at the last minute. But that whole new hotel cost me $500 less than what I was booking before. So that hiccup actually really saved my butt when you think about it. And looking at the hiccup for what it is, in many cases, to me, it's changing something you didn't think to change. And that's not because you're stupid or you aren't paying attention. We just don't, there's certain things we don't necessarily think about right away until a challenge presents it. And then we're like, oh, that's why it's not working. You need to put the pin in the other hole, right? It sort of happened. So that's one thing that's coming up for you. The other thing, it's so funny because it's like I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, every single time I talk to her, I keep seeing a trip, a trip, a trip. It's like, I don't know if you're just going on a lot more trips now, or if you're in the process of planning more trips. I think, if that makes sense. They may not be coming up next week. They're in the future. Um, we'll just leave it at that. Last thing I have for you this week is I am really picking up on an individual. I want to say it's a female. It could even be one of your daughters, to be honest with you, teenagers. Um, oh, it's just emotionally draining. It's like wearing you out. And you keep wanting to communicate in a way that sort of smooths things over very softly. But that's not working. And you will get to a point where you're about to lose your shit if you don't put some very healthy boundaries on this, okay? Because it just feels like you've become the emotional dump truck. That's the only way that I can describe it. With my own kids and my husband, to a certain extent, it feels like that because you become that comfortable place for them to just to throw all their garbage at your feet, right? And they're not trying to use you as a dump truck. It's very easy to fall into that pattern. So this is why I say it could be one of your own daughters, to where it just feels like all of a sudden you don't have nice conversations anymore. You get to hear about all the things that all the different ways that life is screwing her, right? And then it's not pleasant. The sooner you put boundaries on that, the better. And that's what I have for you, darling. And I am going to move on to Linda. We have the moon in Virgo right off the bat. We're going to kick off the week with the moon in Virgo because we did kind of end the week with the moon in Virgo last week. Focus is on self. It is all about you starting at the beginning of the week. We have focus on self. I think for most Virgos, I'm not saying that you are self-centered at all. I'm not saying that, of course. I would never say that. What I will say, though, is that I do feel, especially at the beginning of the week, the moon's grand sextile with Venus and Uranus is actually sort of magical in a way, if that makes sense. Venus is all about love and support and focused on that support system place. Uranus is all about your long-term goals. I feel like things are coming together, if that makes sense, and that people are starting to see you as the leader that you are. Not saying that they were not seeing you that way before, but it's literally like I'm looking at all these people with their eyes open going, whoa, did you see what she did there? We definitely have to put her in charge, kind of a thing. It's really kind of entertaining to look at. And I feel like you may not have even been trying. It's almost like to you feel like you fumbled it like really bad, but everybody else is like, wow, that was brilliant how you did that. I can't really describe it, if that makes sense. And I feel, and that's the beginning of the week, and I feel like in some ways that's really that energy is going to follow you into the rest of the week in many ways and give you ample opportunities to look at why it's important and how you should celebrate you, because that is what it really is for the next few weeks for Virgos. It's all about celebration of you and taking stock of you and what you're good at and your strengths and focusing on those and taking your weaknesses or things you're not good at and not focusing on those, because we all have them. It makes no sense why we should focus on things we're not good at and ignore the things that we are good at. And I see a lot of projects either finishing up or starting up, or things moving and getting on track, and there's just no time for anything but success. And I'm seeing a starting gun being shot, so obviously there's something starting as well. There's an element of that, I should say, also. On this day specifically as well, Monday, when the moon is in Virgo, it's very interesting. The lines on the zodiac that I'm looking at, the charts that I use, the lines go through the middle of the circle, and I don't see this often. Okay, this is why I'm bringing it up, and the moon's placement is a big part of why it looks like a star. All the lines coming together look like a star, and it's only for that one day because of how the moon's lines play into that. And you cannot get a star without a mixture of good and bad aspects, helpful and challenging aspects. And to me, this is all about you. You've learned your lessons from the past. You're open to learning new lessons. You're ready to rock and roll. You have a plan. You have a goal. You have everything that you need. And then it's like all of a sudden you find yourself in the middle of the room, singled out. And while that can be a little bit uncomfortable, I think you're being singled out for a really good reason. It's like everything that you've worked towards is being recognized, and you didn't even have to do anything to do that, which is not true. We both know that you did a whole lot to do that. So it's a really big deal, honestly. And with the week starting off with that kind of energy, I can only see you surfing through the rest of the week on that high, if that makes sense. Very important. There is a day coming up this week, or at least I feel there is a day coming up this week where it's really important to take time off. So if you have a day that's scheduled off and somebody wants you to come in and do something, it's important to keep that day clear. This is like family day. This is like the day that you promised your husband you wouldn't work that day so that you guys could spend time together. I keep seeing, other plans that have been made, promises that have been made, and the words, "it'll just take me a minute," really aren't going to work this time. Bump it to the next day if you can. So that's what I have for you, Linda. Moving on to Matalyn, we are kicking off the week with the moon in Virgo, and the Virgo's focus is moving on to self, which most Virgos I know are more than happy to talk about themselves. I've known quite a few Virgos over the years very, very well. They really do love it being all about them. And, once a year, we all take turns. This year, it's Virgo's turn for it to be all about you, which is awesome, which is scary at the same time, because it really does depend on what do we mean by it's all about you. Let's start off with the moon at the beginning of the week in opposition with Neptune, which is going to cause some financial strain a little bit because as Neptune is focused on finances. So I kind of see this as one of those situations where you want something, you don't have the money for it. Not this again. I'm sick and tired of being in this situation. You got to fix it. If you don't like there's a song. Who sings the song? I don't know. Could be Trapped. I don't know who sings the song. But basically the words are, it's a metal song, and it's like, if you can't stand the way this place is, take yourself to higher places. It means if you don't like the situation, get out of it, basically. You can't wait for somebody else to fix something for you. In fact, that is the absolute worst thing you could ever do in your entire life, is set yourself up to rely on other people. You're going to be let down. You're not every time, but you're going to be let down. It is an absolute certainty that you will be let down at some point, because we can't even always make commitments to ourselves, let alone other people, right? And we all go through that. You're going to let people down yourself at some point. It's just sometimes we have to. There's no way to get away from that. So the more dependent on yourself you are, the better, in that particular case. But also I kind of feel like, part of the reason why this is happening is because this challenge really brings it to the surface and really forces you to look at it and go, you know what? I'm tired of being in this situation. I need to change it. I need to do something to change it so that you're not repeating this problem, if that makes sense. Also, what I find very interesting, and it doesn't happen very often, and that's why I want to say it, because it has everything to do with the position of the moon in Virgo at the beginning of the week. Once the moon moves out of it, it breaks up. It's the way that I look at the charts. All the little lines are in the middle of the circle, right? So you can see clear blue lines. Those are how planets are lining up to be helpful with each other. Clear red lines, that's how the planets are lining up in challenges, right? The moon being where it is sort of creating a star in all of these lines. And you can't have a star without both the challenge aspects as well as the helpful aspects. And I almost feel like it's saying it's time for you to be the star. You are the star. Step up onto the stage, star, because you are the star. And I feel that that has a lot to do with just you stepping into the next chapter of your life where you are the star. Well, you're always the star of your own story, okay? And if anybody says there's anything wrong with that, punch them in the nose and walk away. No, don't punch them. You're always the star of your own story. And this is the next step. And I feel like you've been really overthinking what that next step should be for a long time. It's time to stop thinking about it and make a decision, right? Because you're not going to know if it's the right decision until you try it, period. Okay. And you can't not make a decision because you're not sure if you're making the right decision. That's just going to make you crazy and frustrated. Okay. The next step is now. Take the step and see where it goes. You never know until you take the step. The moon moves out of Virgo with this beautiful energy that is in there, you know, that the moon is creating in Virgo and making you the star, but then it moves out the very next day. Does that mean you're not the star anymore? No, because I feel like you can carry this energy, this brand new, this I'm going to go get it. This is what I'm going to do. Oh my God, I'm so excited about this energy into the rest of the week and see what kind of awesome shit you can get into in the process. I know you have ideas. I know you have plans. I know you don't share them very often. I know that you have specific things that you want to do. Do them. You don't have to discuss it. You don't have to tell anybody. You don't need permission. Do it. See what happens. You never know until you try. So that's what I have for you, darling. Moving on to Theresa. Oh, Libra is a little bit crazy this week. Okay, I just gotta say things are a little bit crazy this week in Libra. And we're going to start on Monday. Like, let's just go ahead and kick off the whole week with the crazy, okay? We're going to move up to crazy. It's not going to be quite so crazy the whole time. We're sort of getting our toes wet into the crazy before it becomes really crazy. Say Wednesday and things crazy up even more. But Monday, the moon moves into Libra. Focus is on the past in opposition with Neptune, which is focused on finances. Now, this opposition is a pretty easy one. This opposition is all about finding yourself in that broke situation, like you have found yourself many times before, but also identifying that it's the same pattern that puts you in that broke space over and over and over again. And while this is annoying to be brought to your attention, it needs to be brought to your attention. If you keep making the same mistake, you're going to keep making the same results. And this epiphany that it is the same mistake over and over again helps you to make a decision to change the way you're doing things so that you're not making the same mistake over and over again, if that makes sense. So it's a bitty challenge. It's hardly even anything to write home about, really, when you think about it. It's more annoying than anything. The grand trine between the moon and Pluto and the sun is something more exciting to talk about, really, because the sun's focus is on career and Pluto's focus is right on the cusp of those you love and your day-to-day schedule. These things are sort of working together, including brilliant old ideas from the past that are sort of helping you to advance in your career. So that can be a time, moving into specialized driving, that could be moving up the management chain, that could be a raise. It can be as small as a raise. Either way, it's a step in the right direction, right? It's all about growth and moving in the direction that you want to move in your career. As we move into Tuesday, we continue that trine with the sun only. So we still have this really good energy going into career advancement. But as we get into Wednesday, we're sort of at the end of Libra. As the moon is moving out of Libra into Scorpio, moves into opposition with Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is already in this pretty big challenge. So the moon comes in, and the moon's influence makes this a huge challenge for a couple of days. Luckily for you, it's like one day, and that's it. So good for you. And of course, that day is Wednesday as the moon moves into opposition with Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is all about growth and expansion around your long-term goals. And the moon's focus in this challenge really is how emotional thought processes are holding you back. And I think this is brilliant for a Libra, because even though you Libras are logical air signs, right? Suppose it's all about brilliance. Libra to me is the more emotional of the three. And when you get into that emotional sort of beating yourself up over not being perfect place, it really does get in the way of you being productive about anything, right? So this is a challenge that is actually really good for you, because by bringing this to the light, it allows you to identify how you are allowing this emotional thinking to make your decisions. Maybe because you're scared to make decisions. Libras aren't great at making decisions. Maybe because it's easier so you don't have to take accountability. I don't know what the reasoning behind that is. Okay, I know that, it is a thing for Libras to not be good decision makers for whatever reason. I feel like each one of them has a personal reason why it is this way. But the point is that it's up to you to change that. And it's up to you to harness that power, your inner goddess power. And the only way that you can do that is to eliminate your stinking thinking, is to eliminate that emotional thought process, especially when that emotional thought process is destructive to yourself, if that makes sense. And then the moon leaves, and then things calm way the hell down. Even almost to a point of like it didn't even happen. It's like night and day. One day is like, oh my God, everybody's going crazy. And the next day is just like, okay, actually, it's not as crazy as we thought. We are heading towards a full moon, though, and it is a Sagittarius full moon. And in my experience, the Sagittarian full moons can be pretty crazy. So the other thing that I'm picking up for you is I really think that it's important, or at least I really feel that it's important that you get some home time this week. I know you're such a nature girl and you love to be out and about and doing things, but there's gonna come a day, I feel, where your body is just tired. You've got plans, your body is just tired. And you may even find yourself in this place where you're sort of arguing with yourself. Do I go out or do I stay in? I think you need to stay in, but that's just my personal opinion. You take that for whatever you take that for. And that's what I have for you, Theresa. I'm going to take a little break really quick and then get back to the rest of the list. I'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Moving on to Regina, right? Yes. Yes, Regina. Okay, everything's great right up until Wednesday. And then it gets tricky. We have, okay, so there are modes to astrology. You have your fixed sign, you have your mutable signs, you have your cardinal signs. Scorpio is a fixed sign. I'm also in that group myself. And what happens is that when we have planets in other fixed signs, they don't necessarily mesh well together. So we have planets in all three other fixed signs besides Scorpio, so that when the moon comes into Scorpio, it becomes a great big catastrophe. And focus really is on the home for you most of the week. The moon coming in to influence that Wednesday and Thursday is focused on emotional thought processes, and specifically playing into this challenge, which has a lot to do with coming up with excuses as to why you can't achieve your personal goals. And this emotional thought process has a lot to do with that. It's what I call stinking thinking. And when I'm talking about an emotional thought process, I'm really talking about how our own thought process seems to become destructive to ourselves. We're putting ourselves down so that we feel that we cannot be successful no matter what we do. And we all go through it. We all go through some form of it. For the fixed signs in particular, it makes us extremely stubborn and not wanting to move or budge. Even when we're being pulled or pushed to by spirit to move or budge, we're still not doing it. Been there, done that. Could write like several volumes of books on that one. Bottom line is that this is a really good opportunity for you to identify when you are doing that and how you're getting in your own way by doing that. We all get in our own way in some way, shape, or form. And a lot of times we place the blame on everybody else getting in the way when really it's us, and we're just using them as an excuse, which is not very nice when you think about it. So I sort of see this playing out for you. um Kind of with just, everything being sort of crazy. The normal crazy just gets exasperated and becomes a lot more crazy. And in that way, it's doing that because it's sort of bringing your attention to it. And once your attention is on it, you have the opportunity to really take a look at it and decide, am I causing this problem, or am I allowing other people to cause this problem, or am I causing the problem and allowing other people to play into it? It's very interesting what we do as human beings to get in our own way, but we all do it. So yeah, this is going to play out at work with the normal rudeness being way more than normal. It could play out in at home or within the relationships around you, where things just seem more disagreeable. People seem more stubborn than normal. It just almost, my interpretation of that is that everybody just wants to make things complicated for you or difficult for you. Like, why would you do that? I feel like I live my life in that. In so many ways. It's like, this isn't complicated. Why are you complicating it? It's really easy, but nobody is listening, right? And pardon me, you'd think I'd been drinking, but I really haven't, I swear. Part of why that's happening is because it's the universe pointing to you showing you how you're making it more difficult and more complicated than you need it to be for yourself and your own growth. And it's just playing out in the people around you. So a lot of what's going on around us is reflecting right back at us. And I feel like this is really going to be happening for you a lot in those couple of days with the moon situation that is going on there. Outside of that, I feel like again, the word boundaries is coming up around you. Like, it's really important that you start paying attention to boundaries as not just a thing that you have to do every now and then, but a thing that you have to live by. And a thing that you need to continue to use, and in many cases, be very firm on. Because if you try and lay it down a boundary once, the person's going to dance all over it. You keep laying down those boundaries over and over and over again, they start to see that it doesn't work, and so they stop asking. So a good example of that is you go in and you tell your boss, I do not work on Tuesdays. I'm refusing to work on Tuesdays. I'm not working on Tuesdays. You can work me any day of the week, but not on Tuesdays. And sure as shit, your boss is like, hey, I just need you to work a couple hours on Tuesday. I hope that's okay. If you say yes, he's never going to believe you on your boundaries again. You have to say no. I told you I'm unavailable on Tuesdays, but it's only a couple of hours. Still unavailable on Tuesdays, but it's really late. So it's not going to impede on what you're doing during the day. Still not working on Tuesdays. And then the following week, he's going to ask you all over again, hoping that you're going to forget those boundaries and a whole week has gone by. No, I do not work on Tuesday. You just have to stay true to your boundaries and not move unless there's a darn good reason to, or it works out in your benefit in some way, but not necessarily because somebody else wants it, if that makes sense. The last thing that I am showing for you, and this is really weird, but I'm seeing spiders. And to me, spiders are creativity. And I tend to see them I tend to see them when I'm supposed to be doing something and I'm not. So for instance, writing. I did just publish a book on the Mercury retrograde a month ago. I need to get the rest of the series done. And so I start to see spiders that are not there. That's my guide's way of saying, hey, you're not doing the creative job that you're supposed to be doing. So I'm not sure if this plays out in writing or in art or in music. There's something about creativity that is surrounding you, and either you just haven't put a lot of thought into it, there's some stinking thinking going on that says you're not very good at it, so why do it? I don't know what it is, but the spiders are saying it is time for you to stop pussyfooting around and focus on it and get it done. So that's what I have for you, Regina. Moving on to Theresa. Not really a crazy week. The moon is coming into Scorpio this week, about Wednesday, Thursday, so midweek. And there is a pretty big challenge that's already going on that the moon is going to play into and exasperate quite a bit, unfortunately. And this is very specifically around long-term goals. When the moon moves into opposition of Jupiter, which is all about expansion of your long-term goals, the moon sort of kind of shows you where your own emotional thinking might be getting in the way of you achieving those goals, if that makes sense. And that is going to be a little bit tricky, and it is going to be a little uncomfortable and unpleasant, especially because in situations like this, the planets create these challenges to really bring this problem to the surface, but it's never timed in a convenient time for us, if that makes sense. So we're talking right in the middle of the week here. yes, it could cause flight delays or travel delays if you are traveling around this time. But I keep getting, and I have been getting ever since the beginning of the week for you, is that you have plans, you have goals, and these wrenches keep getting thrown in the outcome of the goal. So you're trucking along and then boom, here comes a wrench, and you got to get it out of your wheel before you can move forward. And so it's frustrating because I keep seeing this slowing you down. And I need to say two things about that. One, there's a reason why you're being slowed down. Timing is everything, literally everything. And you don't want to jump the gun prematurely on this. And I can't tell you why. I'm just being shown it's not a good idea to jump the gun prematurely on this. The other thing, or the other reason why these wrenches are being thrown in here, is because it's not that you don't have the knowledge to move forward now, but you are learning more before you get there. So there is still some things that you need to learn before you actually get where you want to go, if that makes sense. So frustrating, slowing you down. Yes, that's always frustrating. Don't take that frustration and throw it into the emotional hamster wheel here. Okay, I'm talking right in here. That's not going to help you out. The other thing that I feel is a big thing that's going on in this challenge, and specifically when around the time that the moon is coming in, is I feel like there's influences from home. So you may be trying to focus on career goals, but there's something going on with somebody at home that is a big distraction for you. So it, could be around your mom, it could be around your husband in terms of their health and what's going on, but it could be something that one of your kids is going through as well, that is, in any of these instances, I don't see that there is something that you can do to fix it. So it's more worrying about it or obsessing over it, if that makes sense, which is not helping you stay focused on what you need to do, which, I mean, you're a wife and a mother and a daughter, so it makes perfect sense. It's the curse of being a woman, I think, or actually the curse of being a human being, that loves other people, period. Last thing that I'm being shown is a female. Not sure if this is somebody that you work with or somebody that you're connected with. I don't see them physically around you. I think it's more one of those types of people that everything is hunky-dory, and then they get into a whirlwind of a problem, and it's like once they get into that whirlwind of a problem, it's nonstop, right? Like the one problem leads to another. It's always a big old mess, right? And it's just not something that you can deal with right now. And you try to be really nice about it and let them know, I just I cannot help you with this right now. And they are not listening. And you need to be a little bit tougher. That's the word that's coming up, tougher, because it's not that you don't want to help. It's not that you don't want to listen. This is their hamster wheel, and there's just nothing you can do about their hamster wheel, and you don't have time to just sort of humor them and just deal with it, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you this week. Moving on to Jillian. Pretty calm in Scorpio until the moon comes in Wednesday, Thursday, and that's going to create a pretty big challenge because there is already a pretty big challenge there. The moon just sort of moves into it and plays into it and makes it a bigger challenge, which is kind of annoying. Challenges are annoying, but they're never going to go away. That is the one certainty in life, is that they never go away. There's always going to be another one. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that once they get through this challenge, we have no more challenges. That's like a huge mistake, because that's not true. Life is full of them. It's how we grow. It's how we get better. It's how we learn in many ways. Some of us are kind of stubborn learners. I don't know if you know this, but you come from a long line of stubborn people, especially stubborn women. It goes back multiple generations. We'll just put it that way. And being a stubborn woman isn't a horrible thing, unless you're getting in your own way. And I can't tell you, if I wrote a book on how many times I got in my own way, it would be several volumes long for sure. In any case, the moon comes into Scorpio on Wednesday and Thursday, and the moon's focus really has a lot to do with emotional thought process. And we're specifically talking about destructive emotional thought process. And when we're faced with a challenge, the mindset that we use to approach the challenge really has everything to do with whether we're going to be successful in getting through this challenge or not going to be successful in getting through this challenge. So if we hit it with a mindset of bring it on, bitches, because, whatever it is, I'm going to bust through that challenge. I'm going to learn what I need to learn. I'm going to do better. I'm going to make this challenge my bitch. You're going to be more successful with that mindset than if you look at it as a huge wall that's going to take you years to climb over. So college, for example, college is 4 years of more school. That seems like a lot of work. And a lot of people choose not to do it because it does seem like it is a lot of work, right? It takes a really dedicated person to be a doctor. I mean, that's an extra 8 years of school after high school. That's a lot of work, right? Even I'm over here going, no, but that kind of work into that, right? But 18 months of classes, I could be a therapist. I could add that to what I'm doing. I can make more money. So am I looking at improving myself to make more money, or am I looking at, well, it sounds like a lot of work that I really don't want to put into it? One is successful and one is not. Okay. The moon coming in around this challenge is pinpointing where that emotional thinking is holding you back. So if you have plans and nothing ever seems to come of them, this week gives you an opportunity to see where you might be the one that is causing that problem. And I'm not saying, Jillian, it's all your fault. Okay. I am saying that it is very common for us to stand in our own way. We all do it. I have done, like I just said, 1 million volumes of that book. That's how many times I've done it. And I can admit that I'm doing it. I think that individuals that want to make it seem like they're perfect and everything just works for them and they're always successful and la-di-da, they're just hiding something. They're hiding the fact that they're really not doing anything. They're just pretending to do it, which is not quite the same thing. So I feel like for you, it is a self-discovery in a way. Not all self-discoveries are pleasant. Okay, I will give you that. It doesn't have to be. Sometimes it needs to be destructive to show you how you are being destructive to yourself, if that makes sense. The other thing that's coming up around you is I feel like around this time, moon time specifically, this may come up more. I it's like almost like I'm seeing an argument, like an explosive argument between you and another person. I feel like, first of all, it's really important to know the facts before the argument takes place, just to make sure that you are not missing something, that you may be fighting over something that's not relevant, if that makes sense. Or I also feel that if there's a point, like say with you and your boyfriend, for example, this actually happens a lot in relationships where you're really upset about something, maybe him not being there because he had to work late. Here's an example. He wasn't there because he had to work late, right? Your emotional thinking is literally putting that, it's turning that into, you just don't want to spend time with me. And so when you approach the subject with him, that's what's going to come out. And that's what the focus is going to be, right? And it may just be that you were upset because he didn't call you or text you and tell you that he was going to be late, but it blows up the situation into bigger than it actually is. So it's important to also pay attention in that instance to where, is this really a big deal? Like, you really have to address this, he's always ignoring you, big deal? Or are you making something small into a big, huge deal? And if you're making something small into a big, huge deal, we do that. People do that. That's fine. Okay. But it doesn't always work out in your best interests either. And you don't want to get in the habit of constantly taking small things and blowing them up into a big deal. We have enough big deals to deal with without adding more to that. So that's what I have for you, darling. And I am moving on to Sagittarius, Sagittarius. I mean, Sheri. Sorry. Sorry. I'm moving on to Sheri. What's really cool is there's some big challenges, okay? And for the most part, you're just like on the sidelines with your beer, your lemonade, and your, cigarette in the holder, just kind of sort of watching the show, but not having anything to do with it, which is cool. At least until the end of the week when the moon comes into your sign. Although you're not playing into the challenge that already exists. The moon comes in and creates a new challenge. So you're just like, well, okay, this show is boring. Let me throw something in and create something a little bit different there. But it's just a little one, so that's okay. Moon's focus, Sagittarius's focus is on the home, which is totally not your favorite, I'm sure. Although Sagittarius's focus is moving into how the mind works, which is kind of scary when you think about it, because well, it can be, you're a Sagittarius, but the moon brings the focus of home back into play, or very strongly, if that makes sense, in opposition with the sun, which is focused on career. Now that means a full moon on Saturday, and it's a full Sagittarius moon to boot. So you can put on your native Sagittarian garb and go dance around under the moon or something. I don't know if you choose to do that. Both planets are squared with Saturn. Now, the sun and Saturn are squared the whole time. Okay. The moon comes in and sort of plays into that a little bit, whereas before the moon was in Sagittarius, there really was no playing into that at all. Saturn's focus is on relationships. This is a very interesting challenge here, because usually the way I would interpret this challenge is you have certain plans, you have career goals, you really want to put everything you have into those career goals, but your responsibilities at home are not giving you the time for that. But the people around you are like, but your responsibility is to us. This is that quintessential I'm a woman and I want to get out of the house and work. Okay. I want to be a career woman, not at home wiping snotty noses. Now, that's not necessarily who you are, but I do feel that there is something that may be coming up around that where there is something that you would like to do and you just don't have time to do it. Or there is something that you should do, but it's really coming to light that you're using everybody else in the house as an excuse as to why you can't do it, which happens a lot because we all do it. And I happen to know for a fact that you and I have both done it multiple times. So I want to say that the moon coming into your sign is really going to shed some light on that. And it would be a very good idea for you to honestly take a look at that and decide whether or not that's true. Are they really holding you back, or is Sheri holding Sheri back? Um, I'll tell you where my money is, but you probably already know the answer to that question. So that's the first thing that's coming up this week. I also feel like the term here we go again is coming up. And I don't see this as somebody with a health issue. I see this as bullshit that you thought you didn't have to deal with anymore. And boom, here it comes again. So it could have to do with one of your brothers. What it seems to me is one of those things that's like annoying and it takes up time and focus from what you need to be doing. And you just, it's something that you just don't have time for. That makes sense. So I see that popping up in terms of you having time for it versus not having time for it. If you don't want to play into it, then don't. Just because you're the best one to communicate about it doesn't mean that you have to intervene. Oh my God. I can't say this is the first time they've hiccuped in this video. But I can say that this is the first time they won't stop. Sheri, thank you very much. Disconnecting now. Thank you. Thank you. It's like the relationship between Rick and your dad. You don't need to intervene. If there's an issue between them, you don't need to intervene. I know you're going to come up with reasons why you should intervene, but you don't need to intervene. So don't intervene if you don't have to. Last thing that I have for you is your mom just said you're going to get another cat. So I don't know why you're even saying that you're not, because you are so going to get another cat. Although what I'm being shown is not a cat that you would get. It's a little baby snow leopard, white with black spots. This could be a cat that looks like that, but what I'm seeing is a little baby snow leopard, and it's so adorable, and it acts like a kitten, just like any kitten would. No, I don't see you actually getting a snow leopard, but feisty. He's feisty. Whether you are planning on doing it or not is irrelevant. One will come to you just like Tommy did. And no, not like right away, obviously, when the time is right. So I'm not saying that it's coming up this week. Maybe you need to start preparing for it this week. And I'm not sure what that means. I'm hoping it doesn't mean what I think it does. That's what I have for you, Sheri. And I'm going to move on to Peg. Pretty quiet week for the most part, planet wise. Right up until the end of the week when the moon moves into Sagittarius, a full Sagittarius moon on Saturday, which means a sun moon opposition and both planets moving into a square with Saturn. This is a very interesting makeup here. The moon's focus is on home, the sun's focus is on career. Saturn, which is all about responsibility, is focused on your relationships. To me, this is the quintessential. The woman has always been in charge of taking care of the household and the people in the household and running the household, but she has a fantastic career opportunity and wants to put her energy into that. But the household is like, but we will starve without you. And so it creates this feeling of being pulled in two different places, if that makes sense. I see that playing out for you in a bit of a different way, actually. I want to say actually that it's very important that if an opportunity comes up, which I do have a sneaking suspicion it's going to, that you're not using your responsibilities at home as an excuse to not take this opportunity. It's the opportunity is a little different from what you normally would do. There's nothing bad about it being different. Maybe it's a little scarier because it's different. It's not something that you're used to per se. But it's not a bad opportunity by any means at all. I feel also that yeah, so there may be some instance of somebody making you feel like you don't have as much time for them if you take this opportunity, and that might be a problem. And rather than going straight to getting offended by that, the way around that is to make sure that you allow plenty of time for them in your schedule. So for instance, my husband and I, we have crazy schedules. There are times when, we don't see each other at all. We're so passing by each other. So we are very clear on, I'm taking this day off and you take this day off. We have this day together, right? Even if that means that we have to plan those days ahead of time to make sure that we have that time, which it's very easy for most people to do. I think that a lot of us just don't think about it, right? We started doing this because if we didn't do it, then we'd never see each other, and then we're constantly on each other for not being around all the time, right? And that's destructive, and we don't really want to go there, right? So we found a way around that, and that's my advice on how to deal with that situation is to find a compromise or a way around that. That way you get what you need, he gets what he needs, everybody gets what they need. The other thing that I feel coming up around you is you have there's actually a couple of different opportunities. One, this may create a challenge for you actually. One, they both seem really good. One of them, the person that you're talking to, there just seems to be something off about it. It sounds great. It sounds like the best thing, it's a great opportunity, but there's something that just feels off about it. And if it feels off, there's probably a darn good reason for that. So go with your gut on this one. It may be a better opportunity, but it may also wind up being a situation very like other situations that you've been in before that were just not as healthy for you, if that makes sense. And you want to steer clear of any opportunity that is not healthy for you. So that's what I have for you, Peg. And I'm going to move on to Mama Sheri. We don't have any planets in Sagittarius until the full Sagittarius moon on Saturday. So we are ending the week with the moon in Sagittarius. Which means a moon sun opposition. The moon's focus is on the home, sun's focus is on career, and then you have both planets squared with Saturn, which is focused on relationships. So a couple of things here. First of all, your responsibilities to your home. And of course, you got your lovely, you got your lovely cat, your lovely little Tabitha there, that you are responsible to, of course. But I also just want to warn of others that may be sort of taking your using more time on your career as an excuse to make you feel bad for not having time for them. And this is where that Saturn responsibility to your relationships is really coming into play here. Specifically, obviously, somebody who loves and supports you and cares for you is going to be very happy for you to be getting more business and working more. And if somebody is not happy about that, chances are it has to do with them. And the fact that they're not getting what they think you are responsible for giving them. And I have to say that I don't know. Yes, I agree. Your children, okay? Your children need you from time to time, even though they're adults. I get that. And I support it 100%. But there's always a line there as well. And those that are not your children, there's a line there as well. So it's, in many cases, I feel like people are not supportive because it doesn't work out for them. And I kind of feel that being a little bit of a thing there for you. The other thing that I'm picking up is you're a very good judge of character. And I am really being shown somebody that you really, really wants to be a client of yours. But there is something about this person that you just do not want to work with them. And there's a reason for that. Don't feel bad about it. So that's what I have for you. And finally, Alyssa, we have Saturn continuing in Pisces. We have Neptune continuing in Pisces. Neptune is so close to being out of there. First time since I started doing horoscopes, and I started doing horoscopes 10 years ago. Neptune has been in Pisces this whole time. They're in very opposite parts of your sign too, so nowhere near close to each other. They're both really working in different ways. Specifically, Neptune is focused on finances in a trine with Venus here. And in many cases, I might have to pause this like right in the middle of the reading here, because I'm looking at a food delivery that's coming and it came too fast. Neptune is really lining up positively with other planets. So Neptune's trine with Venus, for example. Venus is all about your support system. This is sort of opening things up to provide the support you need specifically for those financial goals. So, I mean, for instance, your mom is a very supportive person, I'm sure. But if she's not good at finances and you have very specific financial goals, you need a very specific person to support you. Neptune is also in a sextile with Pluto, and Pluto is focused on those you love. And to me, it's like I have these financial goals and I want to grow my goals, but I need to buy all this stuff for my little nephew because he would love it. So it's sort of saying you got to choose which one or the other, right? Are you going to pay attention to those goals? Are you going to work towards them? Or are you going to spend the money? dimes for dollars. Everybody is like, I'm going to spend the money because I have all this time, right? That's what I said when I was your age, and now I've got 20 good working years, and that shit catches up to you really fast. Okay, really fast. On the flip side, Saturn is in a square with the sun. Saturn is focused on relationships, specifically your responsibility to those relationships. In some cases, this square with the sun, which is focused on where you shine in your career, you may be feeling challenges around certain people who are not supportive of your career choices. And when you make unconventional career choices, that tends to happen an awful lot. Now, somebody who is going to be supportive no matter what may not completely and totally agree with what you're doing, but they'll still support you. Whereas somebody who's unsupportive is not going to support you unless they can see something beneficial to them in it. So I don't necessarily see that you have family like that. But in terms of your extended acquaintances, that is a good way of kind of testing that out, if that makes sense. This is going to become a bigger challenge right at the end of the week when the moon moves into opposition with the sun. So first of all, it is a full moon. It is a Sagittarius full moon. So it means all the crazies are coming out of the woodwork. And you are playing into this craziness because of Saturn's placement in this T-square, which means that suddenly the moon comes in to make it seem like either the unsupportive people are sort of forcing you to stay at home or stay focused on a specific job that you don't want to keep, or someone's not letting you go, if that makes sense. You need to do what's best for you, not everybody else. Specifically, if this is around the job that you're currently doing. You know, if you're working with this person and you have an opportunity to do something else, it is very difficult to make the decision to leave this person, especially if they don't have anybody else to take care of them. So it doesn't mean you can't. It means you have to coordinate to be able to do both, or coordinate somebody to come in and take over for you. There's always a way around it. It's our emotional stinking thinking that says we either go all in or we don't go at all. And that's not the case, right? So in terms of your ideas of the business that you want to create, I hope you're working on them, okay? And that you're working towards what you need to do to get that rolling, because you're in a situation right now where it's highly possible. And that honestly, you can go as far as you want to, as long as you're willing to put in the work, which I know you are, right? So that's what I have for you, darling, without an interruption. And that's what I have for everybody. Thanks so much for hanging out every week with the weekly readings. I hope you guys are enjoying them. If there's anything I can do to improve on them, please do let me know. Again, I'm Melissa Bruce, Heavy Metal Psychic. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Make it a great one, everybody.